Welcome to a mini Smart Firefighting podcast series, recorded live at the Institute of Fire Engineers booth during the 2024 AFAC show, Down Under in Sydney, Australia. Throughout these conversations, we dive into critical issues like fire safety, emerging technologies, diversity in the fire service, and innovative solutions for emergency response. Enjoy these fascinating insights from leaders around the world on how we can build a safer and more resilient future. James Mullins, the head of research at the University of Melbourne, and Dan Cotter, the principal director of the Office of Science and Engineering, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, discuss how collaboration and innovation can help emergency services tackle evolving challenges. They cover the role of research and technology in supporting first responders and how universities bridge the gap between research and real-world application. They also explore the concept of speaking with one voice in the fire service, highlighting the importance of unified problem solving and the Institute of Fire Engineers' role in fostering collaboration.
All right, we are officially live, and I am grateful to be sitting alongside two guys that I've looked up to and just had the fortune of collaborating with in different capacities over the past couple of years, James Mullins and Dan Cotter. Welcome to Sydney and welcome to Australia. What brings you guys to AFAC?
A lot. Came down to see what's going on down here, see what we can learn about the technologies that are being developed that can help our firefighters or emergency management services, and to share some ideas that we have as well.
Yeah, and thanks for having us, Kevin. Look, I guess I'm here at AFAC because this is where the conversations happen. This is where we can make a difference in the emergency services sector. I've moved into a new role within the university looking after the defence sector and the emergency services sector, and I see a lot of parallels between those two sectors and a lot of opportunities for the people to really share their stories and innovate and move the dial on both first responder safety and into the defence space as well.
And for those that maybe are living under a rock, to dig in a little bit more, tell me more about who are you guys? The high level, who's James, who's Dan?
You first.
Great. So I work at the Department of Homeland Security and the Science and Technology Directorate. In that directorate, I lead the Office of Science and Engineering. Within that, we have pretty broad responsibilities for doing research support the mission DHS, everything from border security to trying to detect dangerous things like fentanyl coming into the country, to supporting FEMA in disaster response. And one of the big issues we're looking at right now is what type of research should we be doing to really help prepare the local emergency manager for the future and even for what's overwhelming them today.
And look, Kevin, I'm a third generation firefighter. I grew up on the fire truck with Dad, and I'm a robotics engineer. So I went away to university, followed the engineering pathway, ended up doing a PhD in simulation and medical robotics. But like most PhDs, really developed a passion for specific domains, and that was in the robotics space. So counter ID, bomb disposal, hostage negotiation robots. That evolved to training simulation and eventually combining my passions of firefighting and technology and created a spin out a startup called Flame Systems that's evolved over the years. And that technology is in, I think, just under 50 countries now. It's grown quite significantly to support emergency response and defence personnel in their training. And just moved back into the defence sector because, as I said, I see a lot of synergies between what we do in emergency response and defence, and a lot of opportunities to translate technologies between the two domains. I perhaps don't see enough of that happening. I don't see enough of that knowledge share. But for me, it's about teaching academics how to work in these sectors, and also helping to educate the sectors about working with academia to really move the dial.
One word that you alluded to, and I think it's something that Dan is doing well, is this taking research and translating it into something that's commercially relevant or operationally relevant for public safety. Dan, from your perspective of what are some past research or even current research where you're really, diving into first responder needs and ultimately translating that into something that's helping first responders on the ground?
Yeah, sure. Well, there are a couple of examples here. For example, one of the booths over here is a company called FloodMap, and they've got some technologies where they're trying to do real-time, flood estimation, flood boundaries, and things like that to help emergency management. They actually came out of our Silicon Valley Innovation Program, our IFE program. And for those of you who may have been listening to Dr. Lori Merrill's speech this morning, the U.S. Fire Administrator. She talked about some of the things that we're doing with wildfire sensors, chemical sensors, very sensitive, trying to get early detection. Early detection gives early suppression, and those are being successfully commercialized. We've done other things with sensors. I think, Kevin, when we met in Germany first, we were prototyping our low-cost flood sensors, and since then they're out in the market pretty broadly. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but how you develop a technology and then get it moved to mission use, remains something I think that we struggle with. We don't really have the answers on it. Our best path usually seems to be doing some type of low-rate production. The opportunity to really get it in the field and get it used by practitioners. Give the company a chance that we're working with a chance to really learn a lot about what's really needed, and that often can lead to success. But it's a tough path to get new technology out there, particularly in supporting the first responder market. It's just so fragmented. A lot of small companies struggle a lot with just the cost of doing business with a lot of small government agencies.
Yeah, organizational change is hard, and often the technology is probably the simple part. There's not a lot we can't do with the right people in the room, the right collaboration, and I think that's why it's so important that we have people like Dan here at our shows here in Australia, and yourself, Kevin, because we aren't alone. We all have the same problems. We all think we probably have the same problems, but we don't share resources enough. And I think the relationships that we build at shows like this through the collaboration partners that we have here is ultimately what's going to make a difference in our industry. And that's why I encourage people to come along, get involved with organisations like the IFE and AFAC to try and understand how we can share what we have. Everyone has knowledge in specific domains. We really aren't alone. I've been very fortunate in my career to be able to travel around the world, meet some amazing people, and I generally tend to surround myself, I think I've said this before to you, Kevin, surround myself with people smarter than I am. And that's not hard to do, but it's very gratifying to understand a different perspective on life and bring some of that knowledge back into the country and share it ultimately. And that's what we have to do.
Well, I think this often happens, but usually all roads and conversations somehow lead back to Dr. Lori's ongoing vision, particularly with what happened at the World Fire Congress in May, with not only having the Fire Service One Voice, but World Fire Service One Voice, and even in the roundtable we had just yesterday about the challenges with PPE for women and some of the pitfalls and challenges, and then it ultimately led to Lori having a couple action items for you, Dan.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Throw it on the to-do list.
Yeah.
What was some of the feedback, or what happened from that yesterday? What are you going to do with it?
Well, one of the things that we have in the U.S. is something called the First Responder Resource Group, and it's a couple hundred state, local, federal, private sector first responders across all disciplines, emergency managers, and we use that group to kind of get feedback and try to understand what gaps are out there that we ought to invest research dollars in. And with Dr. Lori's encouragement, we'll be setting up a working group under that to really look at this issue of female personal protective equipment and what we might do there to invest and help improve research in that area. Another one of the areas that we work a lot with is a group called the International Association to Advance First Responder Innovation. And there's 16 or 17 countries there. European Commission participates. We'll be having a meeting over in the Netherlands in October, and we'll bring this up with that group as well and see if we can get kind of a wider conversation going. But, it's a requirement. We like to do research. We'll break it down, and we'll see what we can invest and see if we can make some progress against the problem.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm looking here at this DHS strategic priority research areas, a couple different bullet points here. And I think we could spend an hour. We should have a 2-hour roundtable on all these items. When you look at these from advanced sensing to cybersecurity to climate change, biotechnology, I would love both of you to riff on like what's an area that you're really kind of perks your interest that you maybe are thinking about when you're out for a walk, and what excites you about it or the challenges with it.
I'll let James go first so I can think about an answer.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Dan. Look, I guess I always go back to what is just before this. We caught up, Kevin. We had a conversation about resilience, and what does resilience mean? And, I think the Australian perspective on resilience is the ability for the citizen to really be able to understand what they need to do to be able to protect themselves in the first instance. But for me, as a firefighter myself, it's about protecting my brothers and sisters in the service and understanding what we need to do to better train and protect them, whether that's PPE, whether that's an understanding of the environments that we're operating in. I lost my mother to cancer a couple of years ago, so that really resonates with me as to how much of an impact the exposures that we face have on us as individuals. I'm still challenged by the fact that certainly in the US and even here in Australia, I think it's 60% of firefighter fatalities are cardiac related, and I think that's something we can do. I think we can do something a little about that using technology in the first instance, but education in the second instance. That was good timing.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, when you look across these areas, there's technology areas that we invest in. Some of these things are threats, like climate change, for example. So trying to understand that. And things like artificial intelligence and autonomous systems, and James, you would know more, they're dual, right? They can help us a lot, but also they're giving a lot of power to our adversaries. Non-experts can now do things that they couldn't 20 years ago that become enormous threats to us. Transnational crime organizations with ransomware attacks and things like that can cause a lot of damage. I mean, we saw that with Colonial Pipeline, right, in the U.S. It's really a lot of concern, how we identify and mitigate these things. For me personally, thinking about the impacts of climate change and extreme weather, just from my background as a hydrologist and working natural disaster response for FEMA many years, is one of the things that I think I'm probably most focused on. We're certainly seeing an extreme uptick in the U.S. of extreme weather events. But I think also we're really not capturing the difference between those acute events, the hurricane, the earthquake, it starts and stops. But we're seeing these things that are chronic now, particularly around heat. The number of heat injuries is going up every year. Agricultural lands are changing their characters. Invasive species and pests have longer growing seasons. And in places like Alaska, we're losing our tundra. It's collapsing. The ice no longer binds to the shoreline. We're seeing erosion that's destroying villages and things like that up there. So I think for me personally, that's one of the top areas I'm really thinking about and concerned about.
Well, and I want to then take both your comments and kind of to this other card that's emergency management of tomorrow research. That's sort of, these are all identified problems. Even in the roundtable, we spent a lot of time defining the problems. Let's just assume problems are defined. For the most part, we have a pretty good idea of these problems exist. How are both of you and within your framework of what you're doing, Dan, particularly, like, how can I take these identified problems, really start to drive forward tangible solutions that can help first responders and the community at large?
Right. Yeah. So maybe I'll take a stab at that and then hand off to James. So we really looking at particularly the local emergency manager in the U.S. Often that's a function that's not well resourced. It's not well understood. And we're asking these people, though, to do more and more. 20, 30 years ago, a little bit of civil defense and, the occasional tornado. But now, again, extreme weather events, ransomware attacks, the cybersecurity issues they face, attacks on critical infrastructure. There's just so much more they're dealing with, fentanyl, immigration issues, homelessness. It's really becoming a much different job, much higher expectations. So we're trying to understand what type of research we can do to kind of help them at the local level in particular. We're not at the point where we can just keep throwing people at problems. We really have to understand how we use technology to address some of these key problems that they're facing. So we've done a couple of things in this emergency management tomorrow research program. First off, we've just done a landscape analysis to figure out who's doing what, right? Because it's not coordinated, and you find out there's a lot of people doing a lot of things. And we've published a report trying to document that. And then we've also taken a look at what should an emergency operations center of the future look like, 20, 30, 40, 50, all these new amazing technologies. When James's virtual reality stuff, right? Do we even need bricks and mortar anymore? And what's the role of artificial intelligence going to be? The AI agents supporting the 911 call center, or the EOC person or making, resource management calls. It's just tremendous. So our initial products anyway are the landscape assessment. We've got the report on AI applications for emergency management, and we've got an EOC recommendation paper out there, and those are all discoverable in public on the web.
Fantastic. And look, I probably have a slightly different lens from the university perspective in that, we're really trying to understand what our strategic focus needs to be. We've got some amazing researchers and some amazing capabilities. And for us, it's about helping work with them and supporting them to support organizations like Dan's. And really, for me, it's about, as I mentioned before, technology is not necessarily the challenge. It's the organizational change that goes alongside of that. It's the social change. So many of the areas that Dan is talking about as strategic priority areas for the DHS are really the strategic areas that are mapped into the university sectors. So the universities need to realign and are realigning to support the needs of the strategic needs of the governments that we're supporting now. And realistically, the universities work for the people. We need to work with industries. We need to work with government to really understand the challenges. And sometimes we need to be in front and pull the organisations and government along with us. And sometimes we just really need to step back and focus on the things that we are really, really good at. And as I said before, it's really about collaboration. We're working very closely with universities around the world, in the US, for example. And it's really interesting to understand the engineering mindset in my instance, or the scientific mindset. It really, we do have different perspectives, and getting people in the same room with those different perspectives, you don't want to get into groupthink, really helps move the dial forward, as I said before.
One thing you go on, Dad.
Yeah, I talked a little bit earlier about the issues of getting the technology transitioned and trying to work with university partners to make that happen. The last couple of years have been very interesting. I just think I've come to understand these investment funds out there that may be linked to universities, and it can provide a great place so we can figure out how to make those connections. I ran into a very interesting group, the Spin Global Mitigation Investment Fund, and they're looking for ways to make $100 million type of investments in mitigation projects, and that's another place that I think can really change the paradigm. There just aren't enough government resources. Can we find ways to really leverage some of these investment funds to both get the technology out there, but also do the mitigation we need to do?
One thing that you both alluded to and throughout the past couple of comments is the just the change management aspect of, again, the tech may be great. We may agree on the problem, but there's that phrase, mentioned in the fire service, do things behave or change in the way things are or whatever. But from a change management perspective, again, let's even assuming the technology works. We have all the technology solved there. What are some insights or experiences that you've had from how to approach change management and first responders in terms of what's the wrong way to do it, what's the right way to do it, and any sort of success stories that you can spotlight?
Well, I'd say my experience is it's very difficult to show up and say, I'm from the federal government and I'm here to help and this is what you should do. To have credibility, you really need to show up and demonstrate that you understand, the environment that these first responders work in, that you understand it's dangerous. They have to trust that you've listened to them. They have to trust that the products that you've developed have been tested, and that they can be used and keep them safe. So I think our biggest hurdle really is just getting out there, in the field, working with people, understanding what they're doing. And you can't just show up once, you got to come back. It can't be, I just showed up in town today and said hi and, spend 4 hours with you. You got to come back and you really got to show that you're committed to improving that. And it's a lot of effort. That's, you talked about Dr. Lori. That's one of the things that I think she's doing very well right now is really just staying on message and visiting so many people and getting there repeatedly.
Yeah, agree. It's boots on ground. It's being out there with the people that you're serving, and we are serving these people. And I think it helps to have that credibility of having worn the shoes. I guess sometimes having people that speak the lingo is very, very important. But as Dad said, it really is key that you're spending time out there, and realistically, everyone is stereotyped. Whether it's a firefighter, whether it's a military person, whether it's a scientist, not all of us scientists wear lab coats and have pens in our pockets. Not all of us, some of us do, or tweed jackets with leather patches as academics. But if you're out there in the cold weather or the hot weather and working alongside, really trying to understand the problem, you'll gain a mutual respect.
And both of you are kind of like Swiss Army knives in your own ways in terms of how you are operating within your organizations, and have ways that different entities can work with you, whether you're a .gov, .org, a startup, from both your own sort of pillars that you work in. What are ways that different entities can get involved and collaborate and build on, again, this exciting work that's already in front of you?
Yeah, sure. So at DHS Science Technology, we do have probably more flexibility than some government agencies and our ability to award contracts to the private sector. We do have our Silicon Valley Innovation Program, and they can make awards of up to $500,000 for 6 months and do 4, so it'd be $2 million. And again, FloodMap, is an example of a success, and they're out here on the floor today. We also have something called our long-range broad agency announcements, and they're out there continuously. And really, they're just an invitation for anyone, to send us a 2-3-page white paper, give us a general idea of scope, the impact you think you have, the outcomes, an idea of schedule and budget, and we'll take a look at those things, and we'll send you back a thank you. We really like this. Send us a full proposal, or thank you. We like it, but it's not something we can fund right now. Or we appreciate your interest, and no thank you. We also do prize competitions. We've done some prize competitions around heat cooling, flood mitigation, things like that. And we also do a lot of grants. And we do grants to universities and other types of organizations. And we have traditional contracts as well, but we do have a number of ways that we can work with industry. And if you check out DHS's ST website, you'll get the detail you need.
And Kevin, I'm really lucky enough to represent thousands of really talented scientists, engineers, researchers, academics that are every day making a difference. I think Deakin University is fairly well known globally, even for being a really applied university that takes technology through to high TRL. I think we're the number one university in Australia for startups and spin-outs, and our investment in startups and spin-outs, which shows our focus to really translate that research into the applied domain and working with people in the real world.
So two other things kind of before we round out here is I brought up earlier the World Fire Congress and this one voice concept, and I want to just continue to beat the drum. Kudos to you, Lori. But in your words, what is one voice? And again, how can people embrace this one voice, fire service one voice mentality?
Yeah. For me, I think it's about bringing the community together. And if we could understand the top 2 or 3 things everybody's worried about and prioritize them and just focus on trying to knock some of them off. These are incredibly complex landscapes of problems, but we don't have to do it all at once. I mean, if we can pick a couple and knock them off. And I think with the communities of practices that are coming out of the World Fire Congress, we're probably going to find a path forward to identify some things that we can make some real global progress on.
Yeah, look, I think this is one voice right here. The fact that we've got 2 Americans and an Australian without a translator being able to communicate effectively, that's a good start, right?
What'd you say?
Exactly.
Were you?
So, yeah, look, I think we just need to encourage our people to look outside rather than inside, to understand that we all do have the same problems and that someone else is also working on that. And a problem shared is a problem halved, really. And, collectively with our friends across the ocean, we're going to make a difference.
Would that be us?
That is your friend. That is you, yes.
And I mean, one other thing that I'm kind of interested in, this is, again, kind of a wild card at the end, but I've been enjoying hearing sort of any sort of quotes or inspiration or any sort of thing that whether you live by or something that relates to the organization that you work for, but whether it's a quote, words of wisdom, any sort of parting words that you could leave us with here today.
I think we've reached the point globally where we cannot afford not to invest in this research to address some of these problems that are coming our way. The cost that we're going to pay in human lives, the cost that we're going to pay in damage to our infrastructure, our homes, our businesses, it's going to be too much to accept. We have to start investing in research so that we can start trying to at least mitigate these problems. It's too late to solve them, but we can try to bend that damage curve, that fatality curve down, and we need to start doing that now.
Yeah, I don't have an inspirational quote, Kevin, but I think innovation is key. If you in your organization aren't having at least one conversation outside your organization a week, I think you're probably doing your organization a disservice. And I'd suspect that you probably should be having one conversation internationally a week as well to try and understand what others are doing, what others are doing well, and perhaps what we're good at as well, what you are, as an organization are doing well. So yeah, I'd just say that communication is key in everything that we do. It helps with our internal stakeholders. It helps with that organizational change that we spoke about before. But it helps in our own personal development.
Yeah. Well said. And I guess I would be remiss. Final thing is we are here under the Institute of Fire Engineers little Oval Office here almost. In your both your kind of opinions, what is the Institute of Fire Engineers, and what's why is it again a important member of this kind of one voice community around the world?
Well, first off, I wouldn't be here without you guys. I think the collaboration that you're trying to accomplish here is just key, in addition to the technical services that you offer.
And for me, it's a network. It's an amazing network to enable us to have those conversations around the world. It's amazing the quality and caliber of people that are brought together through this affiliation. And I think it's going from strength to strength.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Ryan Cleggett and the entire team that continue to pull us all together. There he is, the young lad outside, just smiling, giggling. Put on a good show last night. It was really a fun time. And but yeah, Dan and James, I feel like we could have a 2-hour roundtable on all these different items on the DHS strategic priority research area. But just excited to continue to collaborate and cross paths. Dan, one of these days we're going to see each other in America. From Germany to Australia.
Not if I see you first, Kevin.
I will find you.
You'll find
yeah, well, Dan and James, thank you again for both what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Hey, take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode recorded alongside the Institute of Fire Engineers during the AFAC show. If you found value in the conversation or learned something new, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out, share your thoughts, and let's keep the discussion going on how we can shape the future of smart firefighting.